into society when you have rehabilitation, but retribution just encourages recidivism. They say, oh, if they have a criminal record, they're never going to reintegrate. But remember, you're doing a comparative analysis between two systems. In one system, they have a criminal record and they went to jail, and in one system, they just have a criminal record. We agree with our opponents that at some level, you need to make sure society is protected from these people, and there are going to be some people that commit crimes again. That's why they're going to have a criminal record in the future. We think that's a necessary aspect of fair punishment. However, we think that, that's not going to prevent them from reintegrating to society. It might be slightly harder than it would be if they had no criminal record, but you're still comparing a criminal record to a criminal record plus jail time. So they give you a lot of statistics, but in reality, their statistics are just examples. They say that they give you this example of this rehab center in Germany where 10 juveniles committed a crime and 6 returned to that same rehab center. One example doesn't prove a general principle. You really shouldn't be looking to this. The only real logic they give you is that people aren't going to improve if they spend 3 months in rehab. And yes, they provided a lot of nice theories about why rehab might not work, but when you actually look to the statistics, according to the National Institute for Corrections in the United States, if rehab is targeted correctly, it can reduce recidivism 10 through 20%. The center they talked about in Germany, well, that was a failed center. That wasn't rehab implemented properly. Additionally, they tell you that 64% of people who commit hate crimes after rehabilitation, they then go and commit hate crimes again. Sure, that might be true. Racism is really hard to get rid of. However, they never give you the statistic about how many people commit hate crimes, go to jail, then commit hate crimes again. I can guarantee you the statistic for jail, when you think about all the ethnic violence that exists within jail, is probably a lot higher than 64%. So you really shouldn't be looking to that number. So let's look to the logic about why rehabilitation would reduce recidivism. We can very clearly explain to you in case that there's so much violence in jail, and youth are very impressionable, so when they're exposed to this violence, that makes them more likely to commit crimes in the future. If you send a 13-year-old drug user to jail, that's going to do a lot more damage to that 13-year-old than the crime of smoking pot did in the first place. A basic concept behind punishment is that the punishment itself shouldn't be worse than the crime. That doesn't make any sense. That's not proportionality, which is a necessary aspect of fair punishment. We need to ensure that they're able to reintegrate, but they won't be able to if they're exposed to a lot of violence in jail and they adopt these violent behaviors in the future. Since youth are so impressionable, when they're given psychological counseling, it's going to encourage them to reintegrate. So now let's go into the argument about how they're less culpable, and this relates to the psychological stuff I was talking about. 70% of juveniles have mental disorders. Sorry, 70% of juveniles who are convicted and sent to jail have mental disorders. These kids, they need counseling. They don't need to be incarcerated. If they're incarcerated, that's just going to encourage them. It's going to cause their mental disorders to develop even further and become even worse. And so especially if you want to talk about recidivism, these kids really do need the counseling to ensure that they can successfully reintegrate into society. Additionally, as I said before, a necessary aspect of fair punishment is proportionality. And when you're punishing someone that didn't necessarily understand their action, that's not proportionality. That's why these kids don't deserve punishment. Instead, they deserve help and treatment. Additionally, the reduced psychological maturity of juveniles is another reason that it wouldn't be proportional to send them to jail. As we said in our first speech, juveniles are overrepresented statistically in almost every aspect of reckless behavior. In the United States, for example, in New York City, in fact, right next to my house, about 3 weeks ago, there was a 15-year-old kid who decided to blow up a Starbucks because he wanted to be like Brad Pitt in Fight Club. I can guarantee you that by the time this kid's 20, he's going to realize how silly his action was. But he might need a bit of help realizing that, and sending him to jail is not going to encourage him to reintegrate into society and help him develop and understand that what he did was wrong. So lastly, let's talk about the cost. They say they don't understand why it's cheaper, but we give you clear logic in our case, and also a statistic where the New York State drug courts, though they take $500 million to run, you actually gain $1 billion by their implementation. It's because of things like reduced recidivism, which means less law enforcement, that you need to spend less money. Additionally, when you have this vocational training, which encourages people to develop their skills and then look for jobs later, that contributes to the economy. Essentially, it's a cycle where you get economic benefits in the long run. So let's look at how the economy relates to human rights and protecting society. When you can spend less money on implementing punishment, that means more money that you can spend on other things. Things like protecting human rights, things like trying to deter criminals from committing crimes in the future. So for many reasons we've given you in today's debate round, you should please affirm today's resolution.
Explain exactly who integrated in in the society. You said that it will be much more easier for the juveniles to integrate in the society. Where did it work exactly?
I mean, we do use statistics about reduced recidivism. I think those should be sufficient to prove the theory.
Oh, okay. And what mental disorder should a robber have, for example, who's stealing in the store, and who is supposed to must be a regular
I mean,
child?
I don't know exactly which mental disorders they have, but the fact of the matter is that 70% of incarcerated youth do have mental disorders. So when you send them to jail and they don't get treatment, that's going to be a big problem for them in the long run.
Oh, okay. Why doesn't, for example, a 17-year-old juvenile understand what he has committed, and why, for example, a 19-year-old juvenile should be capable to understand?
Okay. Well, at some level, there isn't that big a distinction. I agree with you there. But when it comes to laws, we do have to set them. If you look at the law for like the difference between a felony in the United States and a misdemeanor, it's often a fairly arbitrary line. Like if I steal $100, it's a far less severe punishment than if I steal 101. But if we're trying to make law systems work, we do have to set these lines somewhere.
Oh, okay.
And we think that 18 is the best line to set.
And could you once more please tell us about the example of marijuana? Or
No, I was just saying that, like, let's say there's a 13-year-old kid who has like over 5 grams of pot, so they decide that that means he's a drug dealer and he needs to go to jail for like 10 years. That does a lot more harm to him than having 6 grams of marijuana does.
So do you think that while being, for example, in rehab, he will improve and he will realize that he has not, like, for example, he has done bad things?
I'm saying I don't think it matters that much, actually, because, I mean, we explained to you why we think, for this specific example, I don't think having 6 grams of marijuana does that much harm to you. I think going to jail does far much more harm.
Oh, okay. Could you once more say, why is it cheaper? I mean, what about the employment?
I mean,
what
you
about
have,
the teachers?
in both systems you have employment. Like, you have prison guards, you have teachers, whatever. However, under one of the systems, people get vocational training, so then they can go later off and help develop the economy because they get employed and, you know, make money and then they contribute to the economy. And then also when you have reduced recidivism rates, like when people commit less crimes, that means you need less law enforcement, and that also saves money. So in 2 different ways, you save money.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Hello, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear judges and fellow spectators and debaters. I would like to start by the dear affirmative speech which said, during the cross-sex, the first affirmative said that we need to protect the society. Yes, but rehab is not the way. In most countries, rehabilitation lasts up to 2 years. Now think how would the society feel that when the person who killed people will be back there in 3 months. That's not protection. That's an unsafe society. A safe society is locking that man and making the society feel safer, and knowing that he has no chance to break at night and probably murder again. So by putting people in jail, we will protect the society, and we will serve justice to the victims. So the victim is the most important here, not the criminal. The criminal offended the fundamental laws of the victim. So about the criminal record case, in the criminal record you said that there won't be mentioned that they were cured. Okay, that sounds really scary and really weird. I mean, let's say I'm an employer and I see someone's criminal record and I don't see where he's cured. I might think that he's never cured. I might think that he's still running from the cops, and that's not the way to get employed. That's not the way to reintegrate in the society. I'd also like to go to the smoking pot and jail stuff. No, we are not saying that by smoking pot you should go and be locked for life in jail. We're saying that the parents, the guardian, the responsible guardian should pay a fine, and that responsible guardian should pay a strict fine, and then the responsible guardian will basically retribute his son or his offspring. So that's an indirect way